We're going to give you a little, coffee pick-me-up because this is a big conversation. Oh, can you hear me? I guess it would be helpful if I put up my microphone. I'm Anne Choquette, author of The Big Life. I am thrilled to be here with this amazing panel of women. We had the most amazing prep calls, and I have 45 minutes on the countdown clock right here, if you catch me watching my time, because I really doubt that we're going to be able to get to everything that is so important. We are here to talk about rebranding working motherhood. And I want to set some ground rules for this conversation. First of all, we are not going to talk about motherhood as a superpower. We are not going to talk about the ways in which it is hard to be heard, hard to move ahead. That would be like preaching to the choir. You know that already. That is table stakes. We know how hard it is to be ambitious in your career and be ambitious for your family life. I just did a story for the Riveter about how an entire generation of young women tell me that they are terrified, in fear of what will happen to their career when they become mothers. And I didn't understand this fear when I first heard it. I thought it was the same kind of fear that I had. I put off having children and continued to rise in my career. And then my fear was, will I be able to have children when my career is ready for that? But this next generation of women have told me that what they're afraid of is losing control, that they have worked so hard to build their credibility, to build their skills, to get ground under their feet, and they're afraid of losing control. So this amazing panel of women is going to help us change the hearts and minds of companies, of women, of politics, of decision makers, so that we can get rid of that fear and we can change the dynamics for a new generation. So I'm going to start. I want everybody, first of all, to introduce themselves and say what it is that you do. But I want you to answer very quickly this one question as we go down the line. And it's the question that every single time I host a conversation, I always ask. If I could solve one problem for you, what would it be? And so if we could here today solve one problem in rebranding motherhood from your perspective, what would that problem be? Let's start here.
Hey, ladies. No, this is like church. Hey, ladies.
Hey.
Thank you. I'm Susan Chapman Hughes. I am EVP, Global Digital Capabilities, Transformation, and Operations. I have the longest title at American Express. But that just means I do it all. No, very happy to be here with you all today. I think, in answer to your question, Anne, the one thing that I could solve is parental leave, right? So I came to motherhood late in life, 47. Unlike many people who are like, I'm putting it off, I never expected to actually have a baby at 47, but damn it, I did it. And when I took leave, I realized that, 3 months is not enough. So I thought I was actually doing something really great by piecing together my vacation and all of my other time in order to create a 4-month maternity leave for myself. Mm-hmm. And when I came back from maternity leave, I literally went to the head of HR and said, this is ridiculous and it's not enough. We have to do something if we want to create opportunities for women to actually stay in the workforce and to actually still be a mother and bond with your baby and, damn it, feel good enough about coming back to work. We have to do something different. So I worked with the company, and now every mother gets 6 months of leave off, and the fathers get 5 months. So it's an equal opportunity love. So that's my thing.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Latham Thomas. I'm the founder of a company called Mama Glow. We support women and families at the threshold of change at fertility, pregnancy, and new motherhood. And I work as a doula primarily, an educator. And I also love this paid leave thing because I think it's so critically important that we make sure that families have time to bond and be home, and that we recognize that an infant learns whether or not the world is a safe place by spending time with family. And so that is really valuable. It's also really important for the maternal and fetal bond. But for me, to say something different, I would suggest really looking at this crisis that we see in maternal health in this country. We're 55th on the list of developed countries in maternal deaths. That is not a good thing. There are safer places to be born right now in the world. Places that you would probably not even expect to go to the doctor are safer places than being born in the United States. And, that's a really alarming fact, especially since if you look to see all the medical advances we've had in the past 300 years, it was actually safer 300 years ago to give birth. And when we're talking about that, we're talking specifically about Black and brown women who people think usually when we talk about these statistics that we're talking about poor people. We're actually talking about economically mobile people. We're talking about executives that have the same. People are not protected economically. They're not protected by education. They're not protected by their status. And when they go into a hospital, a white woman and a Black woman can go into the same place and have completely, totally different experiences, which is what we saw with Serena Williams and Beyonce, right? So we know that there's an issue that we have to really seed and as a nation come together and really center. And so I see it as really critical for large companies also to invest in the health of the people who work there and expand their packages, their health packages, to really look at comprehensive care so that mothers get the health markers looked at earlier. And a lot of the places that we work also are really high stress. And so we see women in particularly in executive positions, I see a lot of these people end up with a lot of the health markers that we need to be catching early, right? So this is something that I would like to see addressed.
Yes, amen. Mina.
Hi, everyone. I'm Mina Harris. I'm the, founder of Phenomenal Woman, which is what I do on the side. I'm here today as a representative of Uber. I'm head of leadership and strategy there. And I'll be quick to answer your question. I would expand the notion of motherhood to caregiving generally in two specific ways. Number one, we need men involved in this conversation. I want men on stages like this. I want men talking about rebranding motherhood. If we are proposing to, change culture, to shift paradigms, to destigmatize what it means to be a working mother, men have to be a part of that conversation. And it's not just, equal parental leave is very important, right? The leave part is critical, but it's also about male allyship and men being able to speak to the needs for women in the workplace. The other component of that, I think, is to recognize that there are lots of women who not only are mothers or may not be mothers, but have caregiving duties and are predominantly those that are going to be in those roles. So elderly care, right? Back to, parenting. If you have a male-female two-parent household and you actually have a nanny, you have childcare, but in unforeseen circumstances, when you have a sick kid or your nanny is sick, right? Those responsibilities disproportionately also fall on women. There's something like, I think a woman is 8 times more likely to take care of a sick child than a father. So really expanding that so that it's inclusive and also so that we are expanding the support that all women need in the workplace and are not sort of narrowing it to just one slice of this, right? We know that it's so much bigger than that.
That's great. Thank you, Chelsea.
That was awesome. I love that. I'm Chelsea. I'm the CEO of Freda, home of the Snotsucker, which you may or may not have heard of. Thank you. I guess if I had one superpower when it comes to solving the problem of motherhood and specifically working motherhood, I would say...
You don't have to solve the problem. We're not asking you to solve the problem. I want you to, let's name the problem.
I think the problem that I would love to solve
Yes.
one day would be the problem of guilt. I think guilt is crippling for women. And if I could bottle it up and sell a solution that would placate that guilt and allow women, particularly working women, but even non-working stay-at-home women, to table it and set it on the shelf and recommit and reinvest in everything outside of their role of motherhood, I think we would be even better mothers for it. So that's what I would tackle.
Katya.
Hi everyone. I'm Katya Libin, the co-founder and CEO of Hey Mama. So many problems I would love to try to make an impact on. I'd love to give you all an extra 3 hours in your day if I could. But since I can't do that, I think what I've seen is that we're just going at it alone so much more than we have to. And I think it's a problem of feeling isolated and like you're the only one that's really in it every day. And I don't think we need to do that. I think we need to normalize asking for help and leaning on each other in a world where we're supposedly more connected than ever, but yet we still don't really feel that. So I think us building modern day villages that support working mothers in ways that they need it, online and offline, and really just it's okay to not know what you're doing.
That was what Lindy West just said as she was on stage talking about the power of women coming together. So thank you. I want to start with the corporate challenge. How many people out here work for a traditional big corporation? Okay, that's a lot of people, right? So let's talk about, yes, more leave, yes, more care, yes, more safe spaces. But what do we need to do from the corporate perspective to make it okay to take the leave, okay to be in the safe places, to change the hearts and minds of people who say motherhood makes you distracted or disloyal or unengaged or drains your ambition and don't give you the opportunities, the raises, the green lights that you need?
Yeah, I mean, well, I know we talked about this before, but like the first thing is remind them that it's illegal.
I like that.
Right? And then the second thing is to remind them that, like, look, there's no better CEO of managing life in all of its forms than mothers, right? And so, I think there's a couple things. One, we have to be examples for the younger women and men who are coming behind us to encourage them to take the leave. And so, we are going through year-end calibration right now, and literally in one of our leave meeting, in our conversations, somebody said, oh, well, she's really great, but she's been out on leave for half the year. And I said, well, so what? Like, at the end of the day, for the first half of the year, she was here, she was crushing it. We're gonna honor her. We're gonna actually value her on that, and she's still gonna get one of the top awards. And they all looked at me, and I was like, yeah, because it's not gonna be an excuse for us to make a difference. So if I don't, as a leader, force my organization to follow and toe the line, then there's a problem. The second is I have to be very vocal with my peers to remind them that they have to be active in demonstrating and role modeling the behavior as well. And then every time we have a chance, hey, baby, every time we have a chance, it's all good. Every time we have a chance to bring or to encourage someone to take the leave, we have to make an example of them that it doesn't slow down their career. Right now we are in the process of entertaining and developing a program for mothers returning to work who decided to take some time away from work. So it's not just about the leave, but like, hey, you took 2 or 3 years away to raise your child. That doesn't mean you got stupid while you were raising your child. You actually learned a lot.
Someone needs to tweak that right now.
Right, okay, Susan said, right? And so what I'm doing is saying, okay, in my organization, because I have a lot of people in my organization, I'm gonna create a specific program for them to reentry back into the workforce and not re-enter at the bottom, re-enter where they left, right? Because, there's a lot about self-esteem for them feeling good about the development of their career if they take a step out and say, hey, I'm gonna be out, and then you tell them you were a director when you left, but you come back as a manager, that doesn't make any sense to me. Because I think, there's a lot of value there. So I think we have to help set the expectations for how companies deal with women who've decided to make to take time off to have their kid, but to set an example that when they come back, it wasn't counted against them. And the more we do that, the more you'll have a mass of people, because the challenge you have is that one time that you supported that woman and she didn't do well when she came back, and they're like, well, we tried that and it didn't work out. Well, guess what? We're gonna try it again.
You are in a position to be a leader, not just at the company, but in the field, right? That I'm sure that everyone is looking to you for your success and for your metrics. What do you say when people say, I don't know, we're like a lean team, we really can't do that, we can't afford it, we can't make this happen?
Then you have to get flexible, right? I mean, you can do job shares, there's all kinds of things that you can do that create opportunities for people. Listen, if you want it bad enough, you can figure it out. All the research says that When you have women on your team, you win more. When you have diversity on your team, you win more. So if you really want to win more, you got to be more flexible than just that one line of towing, because the people who figured it out are winning more. So pulling out the statistics, it's like, oh, so you think you're winning more? Well, guess what? Let me show you what the competition is doing and why they're kicking our butt.
Looking over your shoulder is
Yeah.
always a good motivator. Latham, you are a change maker from the outside, from the inside. You were imagining with me a future. I love this baby. No, I want that. Don't take the baby. Leave the baby. Bring it in. This is the future that we are imagining.
Yes.
But talk to me about the changes that we need to see for women, for their health, for their well-being in corporate life.
So we had a really fun conversation, I think, about the really centering health first, right? And when you come in, being able to really talk about, like, what does my family plan look like as I'm negotiating, like, bonus and looking at, like, what my sign-ons will look like, what's my package, what are my packages looking like, and especially, like, insurance, like, can we expand these bundles to include things that really are looking at the entire reproductive journey, right? Because
Before you have children,
before, yes.
Right.
So
As
when
you're
I come
taking a
in,
job.
as you're taking a job, because when you come in, it's like you're not thinking about these things necessarily, and rightfully so. It's like you're in your hustle mode, but then there's a point where these conversations need to happen and you don't have leverage. And so it's important, I believe, to go in early and, like, here's what happens if I decide to have a family. Like, is there, I've seen companies where, the US version of the company, like, they have no support, and then in the UK there's housing nearby, there's childcare in the building, there's facilities, there's all kinds of things that they accommodate because people demand it. It's also the law, like you said, right? And so here we have to think about, like, how do we design a future that's going to support our needs, and especially when we're competing in a space that's not designed for us to succeed, right? It's designed these are forced male work patterns, right? That we, like, drive ourselves to, like, conform to, and there's consequences for that, right? And a lot of them are health related. And so what I would love to see is for companies to start having some of these affinity groups. Like, what we see a lot is, like, we'll sit in groups and have listening sessions, right? Where women and families and men and gender nonconforming folk will talk about what their needs are, right? And in that, we can bring that information to executives and talk about how do we design something different, because these are the 5 things that people really all have been saying they need, right? And so there has to be a safe space to do that. There has to be people like Susan who come in and model it, right? And then there also has to be support when you do actually implement. There has to be the expectation that the spaces will be respected. If there is a breastfeeding room, that it's not also a conference room, right? And that if it's in use, you're not having to go to the bathroom and pump your breasts, right? And so really making sure that, like, we design safe spaces and that we talk to people who are experts at doing this work, right? So not just assigning, like, I've seen in some companies where they'll have, like, a male who's the head of, like, women's empowerment leader. I'm like, what? And why is he in charge of this, right? Like, where's the women? And then the women are, like, in subordinate positions and not comfortable to speak. So we have to, I believe, put people in a position where they do feel that safety and can communicate their needs.
I love the idea of a leave plan up front, to say, to not be shy about it, to say this is what's happening in your life, and to be clear about what are the benefits. Katya and I were talking a little bit about put motherhood on your resume. Talk about that. Talk about how that changes the dynamic for women and at work.
Yeah, I think it's so interesting. We hear a lot about the initial 6 months, like before you have a baby, right when you get back, but we're moms all the time. So things don't get necessarily easier after that first year. And I think so much of, they get harder. And a lot of these maternity programs are really based on the pumping rooms and a lot of this early on health support that you need, really to stay alive and be healthy. But then after that, I think what's missing, to your point, Latham, is that emotional support that we so often are missing in our corporate environments. And I think that what we're seeing, we're going into companies and looking at how do we bring community into your company so that all throughout the journey, these women have women's circles, safe spaces to share, and where senior executives can sit and actually talk to women and say, listen, this is really hard, and I have a 7-year-old and an 11-year-old, and it's not a piece of cakewalk just because they're diaper trained now. So on the motherhood on the resume bit, I think it's just incredible to me that it takes 10,000 hours to be an expert at something, yet we've been mothering for well more than 10,000 hours, and we're gaining so many skills in negotiation and management and patience. And there was a recent Bright Horizons study that came out this week that just talks about how mothers are better equipped to be stronger leaders because they know how to keep their heads on straight when things get crazy. And I think it's incredible that that's not recognized when you're going in for an interview. So, I think motherhood should be on the resume.
I love that idea of sisterhood, bring your sisterhood in your community, into your workplace, to not feel alone, to not feel like an exception is being made for you. That actually, I think, is a really important piece, and I want to talk to you, Mina, about what's happening at Uber, about the ways in which change is actually being made. So it doesn't feel like a privilege to have a safe space or to have the right leave, but it feels like an employee right.
Mm-hmm. Right, absolutely. And I talked about caregiving, and Uber has a mission to be the most radically caregiver inclusive culture of any company. And that starts with what I talked about earlier, right?
And it's gender neutral. Like you're not saying this is extra special accommodations for women who are such a pain they want to get pregnant.
Right. Well, and to be clear, I think what I think is most important about it in terms of that priority is that we know that it will disproportionately help and benefit women. But yes, it is gender neutral. And it's also saying that we are investing in our employees and supporting them at every stage of life, right? From childbirth to a sick parent or a sick child or to elderly care, right? At every stage, including other things like gender transition, right? At every stage of life are we there. And I think this goes to something Susan said earlier too, which is that we as big corporations, I think, also need to understand that it's about not only what's good for the business, we know that it's good for the bottom line, but it's also about investing in our best asset, which are our people, right? Like we have these conversations around retention and promotion, and then we scratch our heads when we have women leaving and women of color leaving, when we have, conference rooms that are, shared breast pumping spaces. So I think, though, the key to all of this is that there are the obvious things that we need to do from a policy perspective and from the top, right? That leadership has to come from the top. We have to say we're going to be the most radically caregiver inclusive culture and company, and the way that we do that is, for example, we have policies around flexible work, right? Remote work. Are we taking away sort of needless FaceTime requirements? But those, or do we have equal leave between moms and dads, right? But those policies mean absolutely nothing if we don't have the culture shift. And that's what we're all talking about in terms of the community, in terms of how we engage with these things. And so the point is that you can have the best flexible work policy, but if you have managers that don't know that it exists, that know that it exists, but decline to evaluate a request every time they get it, or apply it unequally to men and women, right, then that means nothing. And at Uber, for example, when I came to Uber almost 2 years ago, I think it's something like 63% of our managers were first-time managers. So part of this is like just helping managers to manage, right? Like this is a lot of kind of basic people stuff, but we see the consequences. And you see with Uber that it had consequences that, go far beyond moms. It was about, other aspects of workplace culture. And so ultimately, I think that's what this is about, and understanding that it's hard work. It takes a long time. This isn't easy stuff that you can fix overnight. That you can, as you said, you may have, try out a new policy with a new person on your team, and it may not work out for that person. That doesn't mean that you don't keep trying and understand that this is really long-term investment. So that's how we're looking at it, and you just got to keep at it.
An incremental change, right?
Absolutely.
Like we'll celebrate small wins now with a big goal down the line. I asked how many people in this room work for traditional corporations. How many of you are entrepreneurs? Whoa, thank you. All right, I want to talk to Chelsea. Talk to us about what it means to be an entrepreneur, and how can we change the dynamic for people who think that motherhood makes you lazy, distracted, disloyal, unengaged, unambitious?
So I I know, and then this is a very popular topic of conversation, right? Working motherhood generally, but I feel, and I've always said this, sheltered a little bit, like blissfully so. Being outside of New York and in Miami, where our headquarters are, but also being outside of a more traditional corporate environment, which clearly many of you are as well, because I didn't have to navigate some of these very real and tangible issues that women face throughout the workforce because of my role at Freda and the culture that we've created for the 70 plus employees that we have. We have a pump room, we have a playroom, we have
Pay it
daycare.
forward.
Yeah, and so in a way, I can't speak as articulately as some of the other women who are really on the front lines on our collective behalf, but what I can speak to is the way that we're reshaping the opportunity within the four walls of our office to be hopefully a model and an example that you can scale a business and you can scale it in a really meaningful way with 70 plus employees who are collectively children to over 45, collectively parents to over 45 children under the age of 7. And that says a lot if you take a step back and really let that soak in, right? We leave around 6, we go home and have dinner with our kids. I mean, it's a very parent-friendly culture. And so while we're not necessarily like fighting the big fight, because we don't necessarily have that opportunity every day, we are hopefully setting the bar very, very high, and hopefully people are paying attention.
I think one of the qualities of being an entrepreneur now is that you have to be an activist, right? That you have to walk your talk, and that you have to take the things that you are, when you are building a business, that you have to then spread that message into the world. And I think that the women's businesses, women who are starting businesses, have this tremendous opportunity to change the dynamic outside of traditionally entrenched, well-worn paths, well-worn ideas of what power looks like, that you're creating power over here, and then someday somebody's gonna say like, hey, wait a minute, that's really big. Katya, will you talk about that a little bit, about the women in your network who are creating a new dynamic and a new power?
Yeah, I actually, as you were saying the question, and you were talking about how women are perceived as being, less driven or less focused, and I don't know, I just haven't met one of these women.
That's what you said. You said, I don't know these ladies.
I don't know these women. Every mom that I meet is tired. I'll give you that. We are tired. But when it comes to drive and perseverance and the ability to get shit done, I've never seen a collective of women be so able to navigate their time and achieve so much with everything else that they have to do. So I think, the perception shift is going to take time. We're all a part of it. The matriarchy is here. I believe it and I see it every day. But it's going to take 5-10 years for us to look back and say, wow, these were all the leaders that we're cultivating that are going to be a part of the change, like Chelsea, like you all, that are building companies of the future that have the right policies and leave and that really understand the problems. So I think, it takes a lot of time for all these shifts to be seen. But I feel it every day that moms are incredibly powerful and able to navigate entrepreneurship better than anyone else. For the reasons I said, from, setting priorities and being really efficient, to negotiation, to just the drive and energy and passion we have for why we build our businesses. Almost everyone I meet is starting a company because they can't not start that company. They're leaping out of bed every day because it excites them so much that the very idea of not doing it drives them crazy. And if we're that passionate about these things and we're building companies that we believe in, I think there's no other path than for us to all really succeed in it together. But it's going to take time, and it's going to take, like I said, reaching out for help and leaning on one another. One thing I've been thinking about a lot lately is, I'm an immigrant. I was born in Russia. And my mom doesn't know how to create a pitch deck or doesn't know how to help me, land investors. She doesn't have any business contacts that I could lean on. And I can't really come to her with advice and help on these things. So I really have to look next to me and around me and ask all of you, because that's the only way we're going to learn how to create a path for ourselves, right? Where so many of us are doing this for the first time, and there's no playbook on how to do it. So yeah, we just have to learn from one another.
And even more so when it comes to the policies for working women. So many of the entrepreneurs I know are developing dynamic ideas of what work could look like and presenting themselves as leaders to the rest of the world. There's a third part of this conversation, which is usually comes about a third glass of wine around my dinner table. But with 13 minutes left on the clock, I want to talk about the personal relationships, the relationships outside of work that need to change, need to be celebrated, that need re-examining to help rebrand motherhood. I'll start down there. There's fear. Should we get you a glass of wine?
Ooh, okay.
Should we get you a glass of wine? I'm going to start down here. I actually want to start with Chelsea because Chelsea's husband works as part of the company.
Yes.
So that sounds very supportive.
Yes, he's incredibly supportive. We left New York for his job, and then after, I would say 9 or 10, almost 10 years running Burger King as CMO, I finally got big enough to lure him away and help me. But I think that speaks to kind of part of the rebranding of the dialogue of working motherhood. I think working motherhood exists because there's a difference right now between working motherhood and working fatherhood. And what I mean by that is kind of exactly like what Mina said, and this isn't necessarily the case in my house, and I think the trend is pushing us away from this, actually, and dads are playing a much larger role in sharing the non-work component of running a house. But I think traditionally, men just didn't bear as much of the responsibility. For right or wrong, that was just the way that it was. And so while the trends are moving away from that, I think until the distinction between motherhood and fatherhood is eviscerated, right, there is working motherhood because, women, for example, are stepping outside of their work mode in the middle of the day to make sure that their kids' after-school activities have been attended to, or that whomever is responsible for childcare knows what is going to be on the dinner table when they get home. And so I think regardless of whether or not the fact that we now work together, my husband plays a very active role in our non-work identity, which is a really refreshing trend that I think a lot of households are adopting. He's probably taken our children to the last 5 pediatrician appointments. He's taken them to
Because it's an acknowledgement that the work you're doing was more important in that moment than going to the pediatrician.
Yeah, our pediatrician is 45 minutes away, and I had a meeting.
Yeah.
I mean, and he had, I'm sure, meetings too, but something had to give.
Yeah.
Right? And so he is the one who decided that, what he was working on could be rescheduled, and either I was out of town or for whatever it was, but those small things matter because it erodes the distinction between working motherhood and working fatherhood. And when those are equal, it's working parenthood. Right? And then we don't have to change the dialogue about working motherhood because it no longer is different.
One of the best pieces of advice that an expert once gave me when I was writing a story for Parents Magazine about the way millennial women are hacking working motherhood. But the best piece of advice was that was paternity leave, parental leave. That when he can take equal paternity leave, it means that you are equal at work and equal at home, and that was a really equalizing thing. And this is such a new idea. My son is only 7 years old, and there was no paternity leave. Like, there was no idea of parental leave just 7 years ago. When I first heard about it, I was like, tell me more about this thing. So talk about, you are leaders in this space. Talk about what that means for the men at work to take paternity leave and how it's equalizing.
Can I just say something off of this, though? Yeah, so I just want to point out that there's many types of parents. And so I was a single mother. My son's 16. I was a single mother for most of his life. and there was not somebody to lean on for support. And so and also I think it's important to acknowledge that what makes a lot of our career climb possible is that there are other people who do the work that we would be doing in the home, right? And a lot of caregivers are women of color, and so what that means for their ability to create economic mobility and also care for their own children. So I just want to offer that to the
Thank you.
dynamic.
That's
because
where
it's
I was
very
going
important.
next. And that's where I was going next, is to talk about, and we can skip right ahead to this, but to talk about who are the other people that you need in your life, because you're absolutely right. It's not as much as companies want to wade in and talk about leave. There are other human beings in your life that need to be there to support you, to make it okay.
Yeah, I mean, listen, you can't do this by yourself. Right. I don't care what job you have. Even if you're a stay-at-home mom, you still can't do it by yourself. Mm-hmm. As more and more women ascend to executive ranks, in many cases, we are the major breadwinner in our families, mm-hmm. right? And so it is impossible for me to get on a plane and go to India and be in India for a week without a lot of help. Yeah. And so I think, the first thing that you have to do is acknowledge that you don't have to be the mother who, makes all the cookies. I remember when I had Parker, I was like, I'm going to make all her food. I'm going to do all this stuff. I'm going to do whatever. And then, about a month in, I was like, girl, this canned food is fine. Eat it. Right? And I think you just, part of it is a reckoning that you have to have with yourself on a regular basis of, what do I have to do versus what can I outsource? That is the math that I do on a regular basis. Mm-hmm. And how do I support the people in my community to make sure they're okay?
And not only the ways to make sure that your child is okay, but to make sure that you're okay.
Absolutely, because I remember when I was 2 months in, I had a wonderful gift in that my mom's youngest sister, my aunt, because my mom's deceased, moved from Cleveland, Ohio to take care of my child, right? And she was a nursery school, preschool teacher for 50 years, so we had this amazing gift in our house. Yeah. And one day, while I'm up there trying to do everything, she was like, girl, go sit down, give me that baby, and go upstairs and get in the bed. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, ooh, wait, okay, Auntie, you're right. She's like, you don't have to do this by yourself. She said, but what you do need to do is make sure that you are actively appreciating the people who are doing it, right? Because mm-hmm. it is a sacrifice for them, too. You brought up the point of, caregivers and them having their own families. I have an au pair. She's from Mexico. She's amazing. We treat her like she's a member of our family, for real. And we don't say that, whatever. She turned 25. She'd never been out of the country. We took her to Europe for her birthday, and we were like, you don't have to keep Parker. Go have fun, right? So the thing is I think, we have to just be cognizant of what help you need, mm-hmm. right? So, and sometimes we don't take the time to really sit down and figure that out. And then get on your network and ask where you need help. So I love to cook. My food tastes good, but I can't cook every day, right? And so my husband and them are like, what we having for dinner, Mommy? I'm like, I don't know, what y'all eating? So figure it out, right? And so I think, having responsibility, making sure that everyone in the household who is part of the support system, and then at work, one of the things we talked about at our company was okay, well, it's great, we're giving this leave, but what else are we doing for parents? And so they actually made a contract with a concierge service, and the concierge service will literally do anything for you. They'll book a spa appointment, they'll plan a birthday party, they'll do all these things.
Are there recruiters here?
Right? But it's, and the crazy thing is, I remember talking to my team about it. I'm like, did you guys know they'll plan a birthday party for you? And they're like, what? So, making sure that people are taking advantage of the resources. Every company that has been around for a long time, if you're a Fortune 500, Fortune whatever 1,000 company, you have an EAP program. If you need counseling and mental health, it's free. Go get it. And they don't know about it, right? So I think there's all these resources that you owe it to yourself to figure out what are the things that can help you and actually taking the time to get the help.
Latham, who's in your squad?
So I was really grateful so I'm from California, and my son, when I had him here, I didn't have family here, and so I had the paternal grandfather who lived we were in the same building at the time, and that was critically important, and we stayed in proximity for the first, I should say 10 years of his life. So that made it very possible for me to work as a doula. And now I have like my friends, and my son's 16 now, so he really thinks he doesn't need me. And and so half the time, but now I have a partner, and so he's very much involved in helping to raise him and offer things that I can't offer to him that he really needs, you know, in relationship with him and his father. So I feel like that's really been helpful. And then I would want to add another piece on to this conversation around like supports. And so in the role that I do as a doula and the work that folks at our company Mama Glow do, you know, we come in and help people like figure out how to organize their lives, right? And so when you think about just like the birth, it's like once the baby gets here, it's like, you know, what are we doing now, right? People are like, we're the grown-ups, you know, you're just gonna leave me with this baby. No, we need to figure out like, how are you gonna integrate when I leave? Like what's gonna happen? So figuring out who's gonna bring the food for that first month or 6 weeks, you know, how are you gonna get a shower in? Who's gonna hold the baby? How are you gonna learn how to manage the baby and understand what's happening? And so it's not just having a nanny, but having like your own nanny, right? Your own person. So postpartum doula is really helpful, and also really helpful in helping the partner, if there is one present, to get on board with what's going on. Because sometimes they're not gonna hear it from you, they're gonna hear it from a professional who's like neutral, who says, actually, this is what it is. And I can say something and they hear it like a therapist would hear it. They can hear it now from a different perspective that's non-judgmental, but that can help them get that shit done.
I love that. Let's get that shit done. What I want most for this audience today is to walk away with something tangible that you can then go out into the world and do to change what it means to be a working mother. So I want to start down at the end. Katya, what is your wish? What is the one thing that you want everybody in this audience to do?
I want you to own it, like really own it and love it and celebrate why that is so special and amazing. And I think it's, you know, so many people don't get the opportunity to go out and chase their dreams. So I think as challenging as it is, I think, you know, being women in this room that are able to come to a conference like this, that are able to take a day to be inspired and to network and all of these things that kind of far surpass us past our basic needs is a privilege. And I think, you know, as hard as it is sometimes, there is more opportunity today for you to be successful and for you to leverage motherhood as a positive in your career than ever before. One thing that's always blown me away is that, you know, 20% of CEOs are dyslexic. And it's something like 10% of US presidents had no father figures in their lives. And there's a lot of data, there's this bell curve where if you take things that could be a disadvantage, but you use them as an advantage in your life, you can be a lot stronger for it. So let's stop apologizing and just lean into the fact that we're badass working moms and, you know, we're doing it.
Own it. Chelsea.
I would say I would echo Susan and Latham and delegate, but delegate without guilt. And I think that that's a really important component. And I suffer from it myself, is I'm really good at delegating to a vast network, whether it's my sister, my husband, my nanny, whomever. But I am riddled with guilt when I do it. And I really need to work on separating the guilt from the delegation.
All right. Mina.
I'll build on that. I was going to say something similar, which is actively reject the guilt. I also find myself kind of getting in that trap. And just to build a little bit on the single mom stuff, I also had a single mom, and this notion of work-life balance is non-existent for her. And I reject it completely, right?
It doesn't exist.
It doesn't exist. And for her, it was the point that, you know, if she had a meeting and she couldn't get childcare, she brought me along. If childcare fell through, she took me to law school class with her. She sort of brought me around with her all the time. I was with her, and I got to see her doing incredible work. And she did it by necessity. And now that I am a mother myself, and I'm not in that situation, I'm not a single mother, but I realize how formative that was for me to like see my mother working, and how important that was for my work ethic and my appreciation of the impact that she was making in the world. And we all know that, you know, there was the mom here earlier, it's hard to bring your kids to events, but I also think about just, you know, getting rid of that guilt, and also understanding that, like, it's good for them to see this. It's good for them to know that their moms are busy and that your mom is working really hard and providing for you. And when you can bring them along, actively do that so they can, you know, see it in action. So I think but again, it's about being active in doing that. And it's hard when all of us are so busy. You're building a company, you're, you know, raising a kid while working at a big company me, it's hard, but I think you have to really kind of be kind to yourself and realize that it's not just about not feeling guilty, it's also about, like, this is what I should be doing.
And not
This is what I wanna
apologize.
do.
Right, not
Exactly,
apologize.
and that is a good thing.
I would say to identify your support circle early, ask for what you need, and expand your capacity to receive it.
Oh, that's hard. Way to lay it on us right at the
We should
end.
just end right now. You know, for me, the one thing I would leave with you is like, be really clear about what your priorities are and spend your time in places that are most important to you, and be unapologetic about that. So if it means that you have to, you know, I'll just give you an example. We have a big summit. All of our senior leaders are coming together. They sent out the schedule last week. It's on January the 22nd. My daughter's birthday is on January the 18th. In June, we booked a Disney cruise. We're going on the cruise.
Exactly.
So do what you have to do.
I love it. I hope that you all walk out into the world and own it and don't apologize and receive the help you need and make your priorities. And I thank you so much for your time and attention today. And thank you to the Riveter for hosting this conversation. Thank you.